Hello and welcome to the March 8th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name is Tom Luongo. Got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about Brexit again because we're getting down to crunch time now. Things are getting tight. To remind everybody, tonight, 8:30, doing the normal live stream. Comments are open today, by the way. I have the chat open, so if you want to make comments while I do this today, please feel free for those of you who join up and watch this live. All right. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me, on Twitter at TFL1728, or on Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns, where I publish the monthly Gold, Goats, and Guns investment newsletter, which tries to tie all of this stuff into a reasonably coherent investment thesis. On to the news of the day. So this morning, Theresa May, and you guys know for the last couple of months now, I've been playing this trying to game out how Brexit is going to go down. And I've worked very hard at it. And I've tried to give Theresa May the benefit of the doubt because you never know. She might not be completely evil. Because it's worth going through this and thinking through every one of the scenarios. Something we used to do here on Gold, Goats, and Guns on a regular basis. And it's something that we still need to do, which is to look at all sides of a particular situation, even though you know in your heart of hearts, the most likely scenario is the bad guys are running an operation on you. Seems to be the case. Theresa May came out this morning and said, look, it's going to be either her deal or no Brexit. Now, I've been wanting to not believe that that was true for a while now. Just watching the situation play out, thinking that she was still at odds with some of her Tory Remainer cabinet. But Nigel Farage kept to his guns on this, and so did the Bruce Group and the ERG and everybody else. And they were right. And I'm not saying I was wrong. I just said it's possible that she could be doing things this way. But no, when you come out and you say, when you give an ultimatum like this, just like yesterday's short news, I said when everybody's out there giving out ultimatums, it's all theater. And they all know that there are other options on the table. They just don't want to admit them to you. There are more options than her deal or no Brexit. There are at least 3 other options. There's an amended deal. There's going through a Brexit on March 29th. And then there's asking for an extension in order to get to one of those other 4 options in the first place. But none of them have to end with no Brexit. But that's, of course, that's exactly what everybody in the British establishment wants. It's exactly what everybody in the European Union establishment wants. Everybody's trying to make this as difficult as possible. Meanwhile, the British people are getting more and more and more exasperated with it. People across Europe, the Eurosceptics across Europe, are getting more and more exasperated with it because they can see what this is doing. And again, this gets back to the original point. The EU is acting this way in order to send a message to people like Matteo Salvini, to send a message to people like Viktor Orban. You will not get away with your disobedience. Your sins are you've been disobedient, and you will be slapped down like the bad boy that you are because we are in charge. They're not in charge. They're not in charge of shit. And I don't usually like to, swear on this channel, but they're not in charge of anything. The people truly, at the end of the day, hold all the power. Because none of those people in Brussels, none of the people in Westminster, none of the people in Washington or anything else can continue to rule without the consent of the governed. There are far more of us than there are of you, no matter how many guns you think you control. Because at the end of the day, you can't burn the entire society down and expect to stay in power. You want to be king of the empire? Be my guest. So Theresa May, so now what's the question? So the title of this talk with today was, can Matteo Salvini save Brexit? Well, it's a direct question. Because here's the gig. The reason that May is now arguing specifically for her deal or no Brexit, which was always what the hardcore Brexiteers have argued she was doing, is that she knows at this point that there's a potential block of any extension to Article 50. And so now, and where does that come from? That comes from Eurosceptics within the European Parliament who will veto any extension of Article 50. Is Matteo Salvini that guy? Is Viktor Orban that guy? It's a good question. But May wouldn't be arguing now. She wouldn't have come out at this date before the next vote on the 12th if it wasn't desperate time, if they weren't trying desperately to browbeat everybody into accepting her rotten deal. So I wrote an article yesterday on my blog over at tomluongo.me about all of this, and one of my regular commenters came back and he gave me what he thinks is his order of operations for how how her deal is going to make it through. And I'm going to read them to you now to give you an idea of what we're talking about. The first thing that has to happen is that Parliament's going to vote down her deal on the 12th of March, which would be what? Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. That vote will then spur a variety of other votes. And there's most likely that's going to fail. There's no way her deal is going to go through without a change. The backstop is unacceptable. The backstop is illegal, from what I understand, having read multiple reports now about how it contravenes so many treaties, that the backstop itself is illegal. And then there will be a vote, and May has already said this, that she will accept a motion to allow a vote on whether to extend Article 50 or not. But again, Article 50 may not make it through, even if it makes it through the British Parliament, may not make it through Europe's Parliament. Or not Europe's Parliament, but Europe's Council of, I think, Foreign Ministers or whatever, has to, everybody has to agree about that. And I don't see that happens at this point. I think Salvini, frankly, says no. So, then they would have to vote a hard Brexit off the table and tell Brussels exactly that no, we're not going to leave on the WTO terms, which then sets the stage for then ruling out, of course, a second referendum, which nobody wants and there's no political will for. The last part of that would be, and this would wrangle on for a couple of weeks, and then at the last minute, May would offer the deal yet again, and it would pass. And I think that that's the game plan. But that game plan has no guarantees associated with it at this point. Markets are not, but the markets are not positioned for this. And that's the big 800-pound gorilla in the room behind all this, is to whether or not financial markets are ready and prepared for this. They're all acting like the EU is going to win here. But what if they don't? Mario Draghi, at the head of the ECB, came out yesterday with his monthly policy statement, his bi-monthly policy statement, which was, in a word, horrific. But no one's talking about it. In July of 2012, Draghi said, quote, he will do whatever it takes to save the euro, and believe me, it will be enough, unquote. Market has taken him at his word for nearly 7 years. But yesterday, Draghi came out and said, I don't have a plan B. In December, he was like, well, we're going to start allowing interest rates to rise before the end of the year. We're going to stop buying, internally buying all the sovereign debt. Or Target 2 balances aren't going to expand. There's not going to be another TLTRO program, yada, yada, yada. What does he do? Just like Jerome Powell punted at the end of January, after the markets tried to implode in December after his last rate hike. Less than 60 days later, in Powell's case, 45 days later, came back and said, no, sorry, do over. They all removed all potential hawkish verbiage about raising rates, running down their balance sheets. Meaning the central banks are getting prepared for crisis. That crisis, Brexit. John Redmond, who's a member of the Bruges Group, and Redwood, and a member of the Bruges Group and a staunch Brexiteer, reminded everybody on the BBC not a week ago, saying, look, no one is out there preparing for Britain to stay in the EU. Everybody is making plans as if life will go on normally after March 29th, even though everybody's preparing for a no-deal Brexit. Planes are going to continue to fly. Everybody's going to be able to do their thing. Trucks are going to cross the customs borders and all that. It's all going to be fine. So who's scamming who here? Who's desperate? And who's going to lose? Because understand that the markets and the world at this point continues to believe that the EU is going to win this fight. And even if there is a vote for an extension of Article 50 before the 29th of March, there's not a lot of time that that extension is going to be able to, it's not going to be able to extend it very far. I was watching something this morning and he said, and I can't remember the guy's name now, I'll have to actually find it for you, but he went through the timeline. No later than about April 13th. Because at that point, the Brits would then have to stand for European parliamentary elections. They can't extend Article 50 until June 29th. It's against EU rules. That the Brits would not be able to, would be taxed and not represented. They would still be in the EU, but wouldn't have any parliamentarians to represent them in Parliament. And that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of German legal counsel given to Angela Merkel. Reported by The Guardian and reported by Die Welt. So, all of this talk about, this is why they're not talking about extension anymore. They can't talk extension. They have to get this through. So they have to try and fearmonger this thing through. But as I pointed out yesterday, there is zero appetite for a betrayal of the Brexit vote among the British people. Sure, there are the hardline Remainers who are all over Twitter still talking about how, you know, Salvini is backed now by Putin, and this one's backed by Putin, and it was all a scam, and all these people were all puppets of a foreign government. Are you kidding me? Do you actually believe, you people who actually believe that? You're like the same people who believe that Donald Trump conspired with the Russians to win that election. You know, it's beyond sad at this point. It's beyond anything McCarthy ever came up with. So I have to look at this and I have to say to myself, has this already been gamed out? And is Salvini going to sit back, or Orban? I mean, it doesn't even have to be Salvini at this point. Viktor Orban's already under an Article 7 expulsion, an Article 7 investigation, censuring. That process is still in place. Poland is in the same boat. How many foreign ministers are going to go along with German edict that, you know, the Germans can't lose their big British car market? At the end of the day, everybody knows that this is all about Germany and not about Britain at all. And something else that came up this morning while I was on Fault Lines on Sputnik Radio with Lee Stranahan and Garland Nixon, somebody brought up to me, they brought up the point, which is that Britain leaves on WTO terms, all of a sudden they can trade with the Russians. They're no longer bound by EU sanctions. So who's really behind the scuttling of Brexit here? Because remember, everything is all about all of this stuff is about trying to coordinate policy under a quote unquote rules-based order in order to stifle all disagreement at an international level. That's the point. For people like George Soros and Tom Steyer and the bankers on Wall Street and everybody who's all the bad guys, MI5, MI6, Mossad, all of these people, they all want this to continue moving forward. So I have to wonder, and I firmly believe that at a certain level, Matteo Salvini at a minimum is going to hold this over Merkel's head and said, you want me to vote to extend Article 50 on Brexit? You're going to give me something. You're going to give me something big. But it's a sad day. Theresa May should be removed from office immediately. Immediately. And one of the Brexiteers should take over. But as far as I can see right now, that's not going to happen. All right. What I got for today. Thank you all for showing up. If you like what you heard today, please give a like and subscribe down below. Really would appreciate it. We're closing in on 2,200 people. For you Tulsi Gabbard fans out there, I'm not talking about her today. Might talk about her tonight, though, on the live stream at 8:30, where it's going to be a more general thing. We'll probably talk more about Brexit. Certainly going to talk about the fragility of the European Union as the euro. It looks like it's going to end this week well below support after Draghi's mess that he left yesterday. All right, you guys, take care. You be good. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.